And poof, just like that, Jesus is 12 years old. Right? On Thursday, had to stop and think. Last Thursday we got him born. Poof! 12 years old. We don't really know. According to the New Testament, we don't really know what happened in those 12 years, except we're told that he grew in wisdom, grew in grace. Jesus grew. I have always and forever been fascinated by this notion that even Jesus needed to grow. Stop and think about that. What does that imply? It means that when he was 10 years old, there were things he didn't know, and he had to learn them. I haven't brought up Christology with you lately, so I'm going to do that this morning. I think it applies. The concept of Christology. That's a real word, that's a real thing. It's a seminary word, and I took a Christology class in seminary, and Christology is the study of the Christ, and what does that mean? And there are two concepts called high Christology and low Christology. Those are real things. You can Google them. Please wait till after the service. High Christology is someone who emphasizes the God-like nature of Jesus. In other words, high Christology, when you look at, when you think about Jesus, the Christ, you are looking at someone who is basically God in the flesh, right? And traditionally in Christianity, we're told that Jesus was fully human and fully God, right? Which is a wonderful paradox and contradiction, just like life. And high Christology is, you see Jesus walking down the street, and you're basically looking at God made flesh. This is high Christology. Low Christology. These are not qualitative terms. They're not qualitative. Low Christology is when we look at Jesus and we emphasize his humanity. We emphasize his humanity. We don't discount the divinity, but we emphasize his humanity. It's a way of thinking. And I was in a we were on retreat, and years ago, and I was there with my best lifelong minister friend. I'm blessed with two best friends in my life. One's a minister and one isn't. And this is my best minister friend. We were in a conversation with a bunch of ministers about Christology. And my buddy Rich, I'll never forget it. It was a real turning point in my life. He looked at me and he smiled and he said, "Groat, your Christology is subterranean." And he's right. I have a tendency to emphasize the human part of the Christ. I acknowledge the divinity. However, I believe the most basic and effective way to experience the Christ in our hearts is to discover the divinity through our humanity. I believe this. And not only do I believe it, it's what I do. We can find our divinity, but I think we have to start with our humanity. You find it through your humanity. This is paradoxical. This is contradictory. And I find it to be truth. We can find the divinity through our humanity. I was, many years ago, I was an associate pastor at Presbyterian Church in suburban Chicago. One of my duties was to be in charge of youth ministry. We were blessed with a real vital and vibrant senior high youth group. And I was the primary leader of that group. And I made friends with those air quote kids who are now in their 40s, late 40s. Did a lot of their weddings and over the years. And I'll never forget, we had one young man in particular. It was his senior year in high school. He was 6'4", 275 pounds, a football player, all conference, and he got a full football scholarship to the University of Illinois. And as gifted as he was, both athletically and academically, he was a really great kid. He was a kid to me at the time, even though he was 6'4", but he was a great guy, great guy. And one day I was sitting in my church office during the week. It was about 4 o'clock, so school had been let out. And his name was Jim. Jim showed up at my office door unannounced. I said, "Hi, Jim." And he said, "Hi, Pastor Jay. You got a minute?" You know, they teach you in seminary when somebody in your church says, "Do you have a minute?" You're supposed to say yes, right? I don't think I've ever said no. But sometimes I do say, yes, I have 1 minute. But he came into my office and he sat down. And he started to sob. All 6'4", 275 pounds of him started to sob. His girlfriend had just broken up with him. And his heart was broken. About 6 or 7 years later, by the way, I did his wedding. And it was not to her. He did not get married to her. And he sobbed. And I went over to him and hugged him as best I could. And I had this revelatory experience. And with God as my witness, I'm telling you the truth. I'll put my hand on 17 Bibles if you want. It was a revelatory moment for me. And it came out of nowhere. I didn't tell it to Jim at the time. I don't think I ever told him because it didn't apply. But you know how our brains are constructed. We're able to do, we're able to function in terms of our brains thinking about more than one thing at a time. Some people think we can actually effectively think about 7 things. That's another sermon for another time. But while I was being fully present with Jim, my brain also went to this place. My brain said to me, I need to believe in a Messiah that knows what it feels like to have his heart broken. That's the Jesus that I want to believe in. I want Jesus to know what it feels like to be 18 and have your heart be broken. That's the Messiah. That's low Christology. That's subterranean. And that's where I want to live most of the time. So I love this notion that the human Jesus even needed to grow. And we're told that he did. He grew in wisdom, and we're told that he grew in grace. So, before I finish, if we're going to talk about wisdom and grace, and I'm also going to put faith in there, what is wisdom? What is wisdom? Well, I looked it up. This is my job as your preacher. I'm supposed to look these things up. Wisdom. The ability to use deep understanding, experience, and good judgment to navigate life. In the definition that I read, it was very important to these authors to make sure that they drew a distinction between wisdom and knowledge. Between wisdom and knowledge. Wisdom is not simply knowledge. A wise person focuses on how to apply facts for sound decisions. Do you know any really smart people who aren't that wise? Am I the only one? Wisdom. Jesus grew in wisdom, which was his ability to use deep understanding, experience, and good judgment to navigate life. Okay, what is grace? My favorite definition of grace is put forth by who I think is the greatest Protestant theologian who ever walked the face of the earth. Now that's quite a statement. The greatest Protestant theologian who ever walked the face of the earth is Paul Tillich. You can Google him too. And Tillich, and if Paul Tillich were sitting right there in the front row, I would say to him, and by the way, I have preached in one pulpit so far in my life that Paul Tillich also preached in. If Paul Tillich were sitting right there, I would say to him, Mr. Tillich, your definition of grace, you almost got it right. I'd say it to him. I'd say, you almost got it. You were so close. Because Tillich said, grace, quote, grace is accepting the fact that I am accepted by God. That's grace. Grace is accepting the fact that I am accepted by God. It's a wonderful definition, and it's almost right. Because I would say, Mr. Tillich, grace is accepting the fact that we are accepted by Christ. It's not just me, it's you too. And that changes everything. You're accepted by Christ, and so am I. That changes everything. And I can see in my imagination Paul Tillich sitting there looking at me, smiling and nodding yes. Because that's the way he lived his life. Okay, I'm going to finish up. And I have about 3 hours worth of material here about one book. And guess what? I'm not going there. But the name of the book is Stages of Faith by James Fowler. You might want to look that one up too. Stages of Faith by James Fowler. It's a highly academic work. There are lots of things on the internet that'll break it down for you. But in 1981, he published this book, and that's what it's, Stages of Faith. He set forth the proposition that we can grow in our faith. Grow in our faith. So I've got 3 hours of material here. I'm going to boil it down to 2 more sentences. What is faith? How can we grow in our faith? Did anybody here make a New Year's resolution to grow in faith this year? It's not too late. I have 2 definitions of faith. One of them is from Hebrews chapter 11. You've heard it. Depending on your translation. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about things that we do not see. That's Hebrews 11. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. We can grow in that ability. And then the last one, definition of faith that I like, is from the movie Miracle on 34th Street. Did anybody watch it this Christmas? My family and I, we watch it every Christmas. Anybody want to say, any extrovert here want to say what the definition of faith? In the movie, faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. Actually, I lied. I'm going to do one more. It's not lying if you believe it at the time. I want to finish up with this because this is the risk of preaching without a manuscript, because you're making changes in your sermon right up to the end. It happened to me this morning, and I've got to tell you about it. And it relates to growth, it relates to the coming year, and it relates to the challenges that we are facing as a people. We can grow in wisdom, we can grow in grace, and we can grow in faith, even in the midst, and especially in the midst of these challenging times. My entire ministry, because my first church gave to me when I was associated, it's a very inexpensive poster in a very inexpensive plastic frame, and it hangs wherever I've lived. It's hung in any house I've ever lived in a place where I can see it every day. And it's a picture of a forest, a thick forest, and there's a layer of snow on the ground underneath the pine trees. There's no human beings in it, and there's no path shown, because snow is covering everywhere. And the poster says, "Today, do not simply follow the path. Go into the woods and make your own." You've probably heard a form of that, right? Don't follow the path. For the first time in my life this morning, I looked at it and I started to laugh. I'm looking at it differently now. Don't follow the path. Go into the woods and make your own. And I started to laugh, and I thought, what path? I haven't seen a path for years. I haven't seen a path for years. My whole life has been going into the woods and making my own. Right? Anybody want to say amen to that? Amen. Yeah, so that's what we're called to do anyway. And that's what we're going to do when we eventually walk out one of these doors. We're going to go out into the forest, and we're going to make our own path, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to grow like Jesus in wisdom, grace, and faith. Amen? Amen.